Welcome to Terror in Tandem, a podcast about finding entertainment in the macabre, hosted by the knowledgeable and lovable Laura and Richard Mathiasen. Each episode we discuss the horror genre, from books to film to TV and beyond. Sometimes even from the beyond. You can find us online at terrorintandem.com, on Instagram at Terror in Tandem, and on YouTube.
Yeah.
At Terror in Tandem.
Exactly. If that's more your thing.
Welcome.
Welcome. Hello.
Yeah, hi. We're on YouTube now.
Yes,
we have a YouTube
are.
channel.
Check it out.
Listen, it's not us videoing. It's just the podcast available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. We'll also probably post some things that we like at some point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not that we're not already experts in this field, but as we learn and get better at these things, we'll be adding additional content and methods by which you can jam that content into your brain stems.
Yeah, exactly. Just jam it on in.
Just ram it right into your cerebral mess.
Plug right into the old motherboard.
Exactly.
And just juice yourself to death.
If you're tired of all the NPCs interacting with you in life, yeah, we've got the solution. What are we doing today?
Well, folks, we're finally wrapping up the Stephen King deep dive.
My gosh, it has been a journey.
It really has. It started with us.
You remember
our pod
all those many, many weeks ago when we began this?
Yeah.
No,
many weeks. It's been months.
I know. We've done 4 on his written works, right?
Yeah.
And this is our part 2 of his adaptations.
Yeah. And last.
Yes.
Until we have more to talk about, which, according to everything that I'm seeing, we will.
We probably will. Yeah. I mean, like, this year alone, there are like 4 movies coming out based on his shit. So.
And TV series.
Exactly.
So this is, Stephen King's books to film and TV, part 2, 1991 to present.
And I want to say I took a little bit of a different tack with this. I focus specifically on movies that I'm pretty sure most of y'all haven't seen yet, or even maybe heard of. Hidden gems, forgotten movies. These are pretty solidly B-grade movies, but they are all of them worth a watch, highly entertaining, and I hope introduce you to something you haven't experienced before.
Well, I'm talking about more than just movies. I'm also talking about TV shows, limited and series. But I want to start.
I would love for that to happen.
And how
can we make that happen?
I'm going to start talking about a very fond memory of mine. And I watched this film so many times. 1992 Sleepwalkers. I love this film so much.
I was hoping you were going to do this one because I didn't, and it's fucking something.
It is something. So let me just tell you the plot. It's about 2 survivors of a vampiric shape-shifting species that feed on human life, specifically female virgins. And it is an incestuous mother and son who move to a small town and find a young virgin to take the life force and feed it to mother. And
honestly, as wild as that is, you are barely scratching the surface of how fucking insane this movie is.
It's so insane.
They can also turn into sports cars.
Yeah. Shape-shifting, I said.
But, like, not just shape-shifting into cats, which they do. The dude straight up shapeshifts into a convertible at one point.
So, this is written by Stephen King, and it's interesting because this is not based on any pre-existing work. Stephen King, this is the first film written by him that wasn't based on anything. So,
yes,
he wrote it directly for this. So this is a little bit of a cheat. It's a little bit of a cheat.
No. Listen, it's directed by longtime King collaborator Mick Garris.
Mick Garris.
Yeah, Mick Garris.
Yeah. This is my recommendation.
Let's do it.
Mick Garris directed Hocus Pocus, The Fly 2, and I'm bringing that up because I have a mention of The Fly 2 later on. Batteries Not Included, and he worked with Stephen King on some other works as well. What did you want to say about Mick Garris?
Oh, I mean, he's one of King's go-to directors, like Frank Darabont, Mick Garris, Tobe Hooper when he was still with us, and more recently Mike Flanagan.
It stars Brian Krause as the son and Alice Krieg.
Yeah.
She's a South African actress who you might most recognize from Star Trek, First Contact, Voyager,
she was the Borg
Picard.
Queen. She was in Deadwood.
Yeah.
She was in the excellent Oz Perkins films, Hansel and Gretel. She's awesome. She's a very distinctive looking woman.
And
with
the
a great presence.
local town virgin is Madichinamick, who is my love child.
Oh yeah,
I love her so much.
Not to mention Ron Perlman's in this one too.
Yeah, I'm gonna he sure is your favorite. So basically, they go, this mother and son who definitely hook up. They come to this town and they try to drain it, and it's really, so the film is very strange and oddly sexy in a gross way. I'm sorry to admit.
Can
I mean, this was 1992, so like
a little bit of trivia. That was not, as horny as Stephen King can get at times, that was not in his screenplay. The mother-son banging scene. Mick Garris put that in.
Yeah, well, he had a scene where they were making love, and it was so explicit that the MPA made him cut it in order to avoid an X rating.
Yes, there
was a lot of gore in the
There's
film
only so
too.
much mother-son banging you can have on camera.
Well, now you can have it a lot. Or
I guess Game
siblings,
of Thrones.
Yeah, right.
Just going for it.
It got an M rating in Australia because of all the gore, which is like their super high rating, but it was an R-rated film. And Columbia Pictures, who put the film out, approached Rupert Wainwright to direct, but Stephen King insisted on having Mick Garris do it. And the film was shot in Franklin Canyon Park in Los Angeles.
I want to mention one other bit of trivia about this movie is it has a run of cameos of famous horror creators, including Clive Barker, Joe Dante, Tobe Hooper, Mark Hamill, and notorious child killer Jonathan Landis.
What I really remember most, I told you already about the oddly strange and sexiness of it. The cat scratch opening with the green glow behind it.
Exactly.
Amazing. Yeah. Incredible. Listen, this is a
90s.
weird film.
It is weird.
But you should really go back and watch it because it's really like no other.
Listen, there is a place in this world for oddities that leave you asking the question, how the fuck did this get made in the first place? I love stuff like that. Yeah. I love that it exists. I love how weird and look, no one is claiming that Sleepwalkers is a fucking classic or even a good movie. It is an experience.
Yeah. I feel like if you were between the age of 15 and 20 in 1992, you have watched Sleepwalkers.
I was
and probably watched it multiple times,
but I did watch it a lot.
Yeah,
yeah. It was always on.
Watched it. I watched it. It was always on.
It was always on. Yeah. In the 90s, I watched it a bunch of times.
And also, it had the Twin Peaks esque-ness of it, not
Absolutely.
just with Madichinamick, but.
It's weird.
It's weird and strange and small town, and you know how I love those weird,
my gosh,
small town stories.
Fucking Sleepwalkers.
Yeah, so that's wild. My first. Mine are all over the place.
No
so
kidding.
It's going to be really exciting
that's
to
fantastic.
Get through this list.
So as I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about some real weird ones. Now they are all from the 90s.
Oh wow!
I'm telling you, the 90s was a time. I think when remakes, it's not that remakes never ever happened. I mean, Ben-Hur had been remade. But like, it wasn't a thing the way it is now. So by the 90s, most of King's big works had already been adapted, quite famously. So we're getting into like really mining the deep content to make, movies. So we're getting into like his anthologies, adaptations of his novellas and short stories. And this happens a lot in the 90s. New Line Cinema puts out a lot of these, and Stephen King quite famously hates almost all of them. But we'll get into that in a bit. So my first recommendation is from director Mark Pavia. It's from 1997, and it is The Night Flyer, based on a story that King first published in 1988, but was later collected in 1993's Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which is a great collection. So it originally aired on HBO.
I always thought it was Night Flyer.
No, it is Night Flyer. The Night Flyer. And it is named that because it's about someone who flies a plane at night. Now, it's a real shame that this movie's been largely kind of forgotten because it is a real hidden weirdo gem. It stars the late, great Miguel Ferrer, who you might recognize from everything from RoboCop to Iron Man 3 to every other goddamn movie made in the 80s and 90s and early aughts. So Miguel Ferrer always played like a sleazebag and almost always the villain. And in this movie, he's ostensibly the good guy, but he's still a real sleazebag. So it's like the best of both worlds for him. Now, this movie is about it's about a tabloid reporter played by Ferrer named Richard, great name, Richard Dees. Now, he gets a scoop about a mysterious aviator that only flies at night and leaves death and destruction in his wake everywhere he lands at these isolated airports. Now, you know how Stephen King really loves the mythology of the open road in America?
Yeah.
He's always writing stories
course.
about like truckers and road trips. This is got that exact vibe just with a Cessna. So it's like small airports, isolated back rural places, and this mysterious pilot who you only see in silhouette for most of the movie, and his silhouette is straight up like 1930s Dracula. His goes by the name of Dwight Renfield. Get it?
Yeah.
And so
Renfield.
Anyway, Renfield lands. He never files a flight plan. It basically lands, and the air traffic controller will come out and be like, "Hey, you can't land
He's
here."
a vampire.
And he'll,
Mining for victims.
exactly what he's doing. So Miguel Ferrer, his tabloid character, he's on the tail. He's still like kind of a scummy guy. He's bribing people. He straight up like desecrates a cemetery at one point. Does whatever necessary to get the story. And he has a motto that he says a few times. Never believe what you publish and never publish what you believe. So he writes like crap, but he is the only one taking this shit seriously, and he is chasing this monster. It's got a bombastic ending. Things go about as well as you'd imagine for old Miguel Ferrer. And it's got a nice ironic kind of twist at the end, to put a little that Stephen King's so good at that, putting that extra little twist of the knife at the end, like, ooh, God, you already had me, and
oh yeah,
he's like kicking you on your way out. So it's got a really great ending. Now it aired on HBO. Remember?
Yeah.
Remember HBO?
I do.
Yeah, but it was so successful that it actually got a theatrical
to
release.
the theater, yeah.
It did, yeah. But nowadays it's hard to find people that have seen it. I totally recommend The Night Flyer, 1997. We miss you, Miguel Ferrer. Nobody played a sweaty, balding jerk quite like you. Although in real life, I'm sure you were, totally fine.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Is it?
What?
Is it?
Yeah. Was
Well, what
George
you got?
Clooney in it?
No.
He was supposed to.
Interesting. Yeah.
So according to Rosie O'Donnell, the Rosie O'Donnell show, Rosemary
Which is
Clooney,
honestly one of our number one sources here at Terror and Headroom.
Rosemary Clooney said that her son, who is Miguel Ferrer, everyone, George Clooney was supposed to be on in the movie.
Yeah, because Rosemary Clooney is quite famously George Clooney's aunt.
Yeah.
And she was married to the famous actor Jose Ferrer.
Yep. And they had Miguel Ferrer.
But imagine a young, I guess it would have been a couple years after From Dusk Till Dawn, a young Clooney.
Yeah,
So
his cousin.
around the same time that he was doing Batman and Robin.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, it didn't happen, but no reason not to check out The Night Flyer just because it's lacking George Clooney. It does have his cousin Miguel.
So I'm going to talk about The Shawshank Redemption,
Ooh.
1994. So this film was written and directed by Frank Darabont.
Heard of him.
He also wrote The Blob from 1988.
I fucking love that
And
movie.
he wrote The Fly 2, which, as you remember, in my Sweetwalkers nod, Mick Garris directed The Fly 2.
Yes, the classic with Eric Stoltz and Daphne Zuniga that we all remember and prefer to the first one.
He also did, Frank Darabont also wrote Tales from the Crypt, The Green Mile, The Mist, and 177 episodes of The Walking Dead.
Oh, yeah. He was the original showrunner for The Walking Dead. But, yeah, listen, side note, he's probably best known for adapting Stephen King's dramatic work, but check out The Mist. The Mist is incredible, and Stephen King himself, Frank Darabont, rewrote the ending to The Mist. It's a quite famously very, very downer of an ending, and Stephen King praised him for it. Was like, that is way better than what I wrote.
So Darabont paid Stephen King $5,000 for the rights to this film.
Which is based on the short story Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption.
Yes. A novella, actually.
Oh.
Yes.
Not a novelette?
Just a novella. So Stephen King never cashed the check. And several years after the movie came out, he got it framed and mailed it to Frank Darabont with a note that said, "In case you ever need bail money. Love, Steve."
That's awesome.
So essentially, this story tells about a banker named Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins, who's sentenced to life at Shawshank State Penitentiary in Maine for the murders of his wife and her lover, despite his claims of innocence. And then over the next couple of decades, he befriends fellow prisoners. Ellis Red Redding, played by Morgan Freeman. And then he becomes instrumental in money laundering, and then, famously escapes through a poster hanging in his cell. It also stars Clancy Brown.
Oh, yeah.
James Whitmore. William Sadler. Originally, Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford, Paul Newman, Gene Hackman, Robert Redford, and Robert Duvall were all considered for the part of Red.
Interesting.
Because in the novella, Red is a middle-aged white Irishman. But Frank Darabont always had Morgan Freeman in his mind for the role because of his demeanor and his deep voice.
And I would say his role in the film Glory, I think from 1989, in Edward Zwick's film Glory, was like a preparation for this. It's a very similar sort of mentor kind of veteran guidance role.
I mean, in the novella and in the film, Red says, maybe because I'm Irish, which they kept, and they kept it as like a joke.
Yeah.
In the film.
Oh my gosh. Right.
Yeah.
I never put that together. That's hilarious.
And it's been widely considered as one of the greatest movies of all time, specifically with Stephen King adapted works. It didn't receive a single Oscar win, but it was nominated for 7 Oscars, including Best Picture.
Very famously, one of those movies that was nominated out the wazoo and didn't pick up anything.
And Morgan Freeman said that this is one of his favorite films of his own that he's been in.
Same, Mr. Freeman.
And he was also in another Stephen King film, Dreamcatcher.
Quite
no comment.
A different movie.
But I will tell you that the novella of this is very intense. It's intensely sad. It's intensely suspenseful because of the digging of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Is very descriptive in the novella. And I think the film is more about relationship building, about, innocent men in jail.
It's about also very much the
hierarchy within prison.
Yeah.
Then what happens when you get out of prison?
And what is the point of prison? Is it to rehabilitate? Is it punitive?
And I believe this takes place in the 50s, so it's not like contemporary prison life.
But it's not like much has changed. So it's one of those rare instances in which I actually prefer the film to the story. The novella is great. It's just the movie is a masterpiece.
Yes, it really is.
And it's a very nice companion to the novella because it's not anything drastically different. It's just more fleshed out. It's just if the novella had been expanded into a full-length novel, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful, and I highly, highly recommend, and I love it.
No, it's a triumph of the human
spirit.
It's
a sad one, too.
But uplifting.
Yeah.
Also, yeah. And God, Morgan Freeman not winning the Oscar for that is just insane. It's insane.
I know.
We want to take a break?
Have you ever felt helpless when someone you know has fallen ill? Worried you'll be questioned because you are the last person to see them alive? Well, hire a visiting demon and let all those worries fall away. With our fleet of discreet, well-trained former medical professionals, we take care of that sickly person in your life who you've decided it's just their time to go. Our visiting demons will add that bubble in the IV for the neighbor whose dog just won't stop barking. Or they can add a special night-night cocktail to the pill collection of the great aunt who's just stubborn enough to burn through all the money she promised you. And don't worry, our services also extend beyond the sickly with our elite packages. With one of our elite packages, you can rid yourself of that annoying ladder climber at work who just keeps getting in the way of your big promotion. Or you can turn that road rage into road relief and send a demon to the home of that monster truck driver. Don't wait for natural causes when you can hire a visiting demon. They put the period at the end of life, so you won't have to. This is a fake ad for a fake product on a horror-themed podcast. Visiting demons does not exist, but does it?
Oh, welcome back. Is it my turn?
Uh-huh.
Ooh, so my next one is another 90s weirdo, originally aired on TV. Actually, this only aired on TV. This is a 2-part miniseries that aired on ABC in 1995, directed by Tom Holland. Again, not that one. This is the awesome Tom Holland who directed Fright Night and Child's Play. I'm talking about The Langoliers.
Oh, yeah. It's a short story, yeah?
It is a novella.
It's amazing.
Which was collected in 1990s, 4 Past Midnight. It's a great story and a weird movie.
Yeah, it's one of those impossible visual representations of a written work. You can't really... But Patricia Wedding is in it.
She is, as is David Morse, Dean Stockwell, Frankie Faison, and the living legend.
Dean
that
Stockwell...
is Bronson
Pinchot, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Bronson, you ever wanted...
He freaks out, right?
You ever wanted to see Balky go full fucking nuts?
This is about another plane movie.
He goes...
Are all your recommendations plane movies?
No. But, anyway.
But Dean Stockwell of one of the best television series, right, of all time?
Are we talking Battlestar Galactica or Twin Peaks?
Well, both, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, it's got quite a cast. It aired over 2 nights, and yes, folks, when I was a young lad, I did stay up and watch this when it was on because you did stuff like that. Now, many years before Lost was a thing, this story it's about a passenger plane flying a red-eye flight that flies into a strange light in the sky. And then only a couple of people are left on the plane. The only people's stuff is left behind, like their clothes and items. You know that series of weird Christian propaganda books, the Left Behind series, does that same thing with the rapture. Well, it totally stole it from Stephen King and the Langoliers, because that is exactly what happens here.
Yeah,
even Left Behind was about a fucking pilot.
A science fiction pocket.
Listen, here's a quick aside. I read the first of those books because I read the book jacket and I was like, Antichrist, Satan, awesome. And then about halfway through, I started to realize what I was reading. Holy crap. That was made into 2 movies, by the way. The first one with Nicolas Cage, and then the next one with Kirk Cameron. So,
yeah, well, obviously.
Wow. But that's 2 very different things. Anyway, we're talking the Langoliers. So, the Langoliers, basically, they fly through this weird light, and only a few people wake up. Now, luckily, one of them is David Morse, who is a pilot who's deadheading on this flight, and that's a term I just learned. That's when when airlines let their staff fly overnight or something for free.
It's a red eye from Boston to LA.
Yes. Now they wake up, everyone's gone, including the crew. There are a few people left on board.
Like a dozen.
Yep. And so David Morse takes over and he lands at Bangor International Airport. Of course. Obviously, where else is he gonna go? It's a Stephen King story. So they get out and everything's abandoned. But more than that, it's like everything has stopped. They're in sort of a snapshot of reality, and matches don't light. There's no echo to their footsteps or yelling. And then they all sort of go nuts. And one of them figures out that they are actually in the past. And what happens in the past is reality gets discarded and eaten by flying mouth monsters called the Langoliers. Now, one of the passengers is Bronson Pinchot, and he's going crazy, and he's going to murder everybody. But luckily, one of the other passengers is Patricia Wedding, who is psychic, and she convinces him with her psychic powers to run away from the plane so the Langoliers chase him. Anyway, listen, another one is a secret British agent. The few people that are left on this plane have a real fucking varied background and convenient set of useful and situational skills. Now, this movie is really strange. It is absolutely... It's a real blast to watch. Have some fun. It's solid B movie, but the cast is pretty impressive, and they really do go for it. Look, if all you know Bronson Pinchot from, and it's honestly all I know him from, is Perfect Strangers, Beverly Hills Cop, and True Romance, my favorite Tony Scott movie, it's going to be pretty interesting to see him in this part.
I mean, it was filmed at the Bangor International Airport in Maine.
Yes, it was.
This story is mostly derived from Stephen King's own fear of flying.
It has some pretty 90s CGI in it, but let me assure you that for the time, it was not bad.
And the character of Bob Jenkins, who is the writer of mystery novels, is loosely based on Stephen King.
Yeah, I mean, there's one of those in every Stephen King story.
And he said something in the film about going back to stop the assassination of JFK, which later influenced the writing of 11/22/63.
A favorite here at Tandem headquarters.
God, it's amazing.
Want to cry? Read that book. I really enjoyed this movie. It's very crazy. It works because 3 things. Tom Holland is a very talented director. It's got a great cast.
And he's dating Zendaya.
Yeah, and everyone goes for it. Everyone really just goes for it in this movie. It's over the top shenanigans, and I totally recommend it. Be kind to yourself. Carve out some time in your busy life and utterly waste it by watching The Langoliers.
And
which is
Sleepwalkers.
Totally fun and cheesy and weird, and I guarantee that if all you're consuming these days is modern contemporary content, then you have not seen anything like this.
My next is, we could probably both talk about this, is It Chapters 1 and 2.
By director Andy Muschietti.
Yes. not originally.
No, it went through quite a few iterations. Actually, famously was originally going to be directed by True Detective's Cary Joji Fukunaga, and it was going to star Will Poulter as Pennywise, who later on Will Poulter would recognize from Midsommar and Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
This came out, chapter 1 came out in 2017, and chapter 2 came out a couple of years later, 2019. And it's obviously based on It, the novel from 1986.
Maybe the scariest book I've ever read.
Yeah. And it still stars Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise.
One of the 89 Skarsgårds.
Jeremy Ray Taylor, Sophia Lillis, Finn Wolfhard, Wyatt Olaf, Chosen Jacobs. They're all in it.
Yes,
especially the
those.
first one. It's set in Derry, Maine, and it tells the story of the Losers Club, who are a group of 7 outcast kids who are terrorized by this crazy, weird clown being from the sewer, who's played by Skarsgård.
In the Greywater.
And they basically have to face their own demons as they process through this emergence of Pennywise, who only comes around every 20 years, I believe. 21 years.
27 years, I think. Something like that.
Yeah, 27, because that's a significant number.
Now, the thing about this version is it's definitely
funny.
Scarier than the 1990 miniseries with Tim Curry, although I cannot recommend that enough. Do go and watch the original adaptation with John Ritter and Tim Curry as Pennywise. It is really, really good.
And Andy Muschietti said that when he signed on to direct the film, he got inspiration from The Howling, The Thing, Goonies, Stand By Me, and Near Dark.
Wow, that's a great list.
Yes. And they filmed mostly in Toronto. And it was released in the U.S. to much critical and commercial success. It set numerous box office records and grossed over $701 million, which is the 3rd highest grossing R-rated film at the time of its release.
Yeah, we really actually have to thank the success of this movie for... There was a time not long ago when a lot of movies were getting cut at the last minute to make them PG-13 because studios had become convinced that they couldn't make money with R-rated films. And then Deadpool comes out and makes $1 billion. And it was, one of the most successful horror movies of all time. And it just, you got to show these studio heads who are essentially stockbrokers with no imagination that, yes, you can make money if you make a movie for grown-ups.
Yeah, exactly. What's really great about this 1 and 2 is that it really follows the book pretty well.
For the most part, yeah. It's impossible to shoot everything in the book because not only the
it's
length...
It's very rough. I mean, it's really hard to read some of the parts.
There are some scenes that
violence.
Yeah, that I don't think a modern American audience would tolerate, and there is also it gets real fucking weird in the book.
Yeah, it really does.
Crazy psychedelic.
It's a crazy clown.
No. I'm talking about like the world turtle.
Oh yeah,
and all
I know.
That. Yeah, it's really something.
The cast of the Losers Club, the actors who were asked who they wanted to play their adult parts, and Finn Wolfhard, who plays Richie, said Bill Hader, and Sophia Lillis, who plays Beverly, said Jessica Chastain. Chosen Jacobs plays Mike, said Chadwick Boseman, R.I.P. And Eddie Jack Dylan Grazer said Jake Gyllenhaal. Stanley wanted to be played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Jeremy Ray Taylor, who plays Ben, said Chris Pratt. And Bill said Christian Bale. So Wolfhard and Lillis were the only actors to actually have gotten their wish.
I remember
Bill Hader and Jessica Chastain were their older versions in the sequel, It Chapter 2.
Bill Hader
was
joked
so
in an
very
interview.
Scared.
He joked in an interview that this kid was like the most powerful person in Hollywood, and he's like, yeah, I'm getting jobs based on like this preteens recommendation.
It's a great casting.
Oh, it is. It's Listen, anyone who's seen Skeleton Twins knows that Bill Hader can act outside of a comedy, and anyone who's watched Barry, obviously. But he's maybe the best part of the second version, which I'll say is not as strong as the first chapter. The second chapter's, I think, a little rushed.
Yeah, you could
tries
tell.
to cram a lot in.
But the book is so dense, and there's so much that, it's sort of like our episodes of Stephen King deep dives. You can't really talk about it all.
No, you need multiple episodes spread out over a year for content.
The teeth prosthetics that Bill Skarsgård wore actually made him drool profusely, and Andy Muschietti said that he liked the drooling so much that he decided to keep it.
He does drool a lot.
Yeah. He said that
and it's gross.
Skarsgård said that he did research into finding his psycho by watching The Shining, Clockwork Orange, The Dark Knight, and The Silence of the Lambs.
I really like Bill Skarsgård. He of the Skarsgårds, he's smaller in stature. He's kind of skinny, and he's got these deep set eyes and this sort of haunted look to him. And he looks almost like sort of shy and pensive, but he's so good at playing these villainous roles,
or even
as opposed
not.
to like his brother Alexander, who's basically like a hulking Norse beast.
It's hot.
Yeah,
I mean, listen, all the Skarsgårds have things to offer.
I have been a Stellan Skarsgård fan.
He's incredible
since,
too.
Since the 80s, he has always been dope, and now he was recently in Andor as like one of the coolest characters in it. Stellan
I'm looking
Skarsgård
forward to seeing what
is
Jiminy
taking
Skarsgård
over.
is going to offer.
Oh, what about Buford Skarsgård?
And
Jans?
Rufus too.
Yeah, and Hjalmari Skarsgård.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of them. They're all my favorites. I've got the cards, the Skarsgård's cards, collectible Skarsgård's cards.
Well, I have scars from Skarsgård's cards.
Oh, right. Yeah, because I threw them at you in a
Yeah.
fit of pique. Yeah. Anyway,
What's your next recommendation?
Hold
on, I need a laugh break.
welcome to Growing Up Skarsgård.
I have the scars from Skarsgård's cards.
So my final recommendation is no surprise here. It's another weird one from the 90s. Now, this one is coming at you from director Tobe Hooper, who we've discussed many times on the pod. So this is 1995's The Mangler. Now, if you ever needed proof that sometimes Stephen King just literally looks at a thing and says, I'm going to write a scary story about it, here's The Mangler. Now, The Mangler is about a demonically possessed industrial laundry folding machine that, well, folds people. Yeah. Takes people, sucks them in, and folds them up like their clothing. And, anybody over the age of 30 will know that trying to stretch that way ain't gonna happen. So, now the thing about this is, it's bananas! Robert Englund is in it, playing the owner of Gartley's Blue Ribbon Laundry, which is like a industrial laundry facility. Now, in a Rube Goldberg-esque moment, his niece, Sherry, cuts herself while she's using the machine. At the same time, a couple of clumsy movers drop an icebox on it, and the combination of fresh blood and, I guess, water makes it go nuts.
This is the one that I haven't seen of your list.
Oh, God. It is. So, anyway. So, the machine wakes up and it eats one of the ladies that works at the factory by folding her up like a piece of laundry, and it's super gory and gross and awesome. Now, Robert Englund motherfucking chews the scenery, as we all know. So he plays the evil, horrible patriarch and owner of this this laundry facility. Now, Sherry decides to enlist the help of a local detective who's played by Silence of the Lambs' own Buffalo Bill, Ted Levine.
Wow.
Who's a good guy in this movie.
Yeah, I can't look at his
Put the
face and
lotion
think
in the
anything
basket.
else
Would
but evil.
He does
Sorry,
actually,
Ted.
for some reason, he does have a scene in this movie where he gets naked and tucks his wiener. I don't know why they put that in. But
No, he doesn't.
No, that's
on.
just in Silence of the Lambs. Oh, would you fuck me? Anyway, so Ted Levine plays the detective. Now, what is a detective going to do against a demonically possessed laundry folding machine, you ask? Well, it turns out his brother-in-law's a demonologist. So, yeah. ask stupid questions. So he and his demonologist brother-in-law enlist a couple of people to perform like an exorcism on this, again, piece of industrial equipment that is possessed. So that doesn't go well. And this, again, very, very large, enormous piece of like, it's straight up out of like a Victorian factory, this thing. It's got it's like steampunk. And Tobe Hooper, with his crazy directing, does do a really good job of making this machine seem really deadly and awful, to the point where you're like, why the fuck would you like use this thing? It turns out there is a specific reason. There's a whole subplot where the elders of the town sacrifice their virginal daughters to this machine for wealth and power and shit like that.
Cool.
Hey, boomer parents, we all love them. So this movie is pretty crazy. It has a denouement in which the machine becomes mobile and starts chasing people through a tunnel. Again, this is a gigantic, multi-ton industrial laundry folding machine. I cannot emphasize that enough, as it breaks free and starts chasing people. Now, yeah, it's got, listen, if you are hankering for a visual depiction of people getting folded into little squares, this movie definitely has that. I kind of love this movie. It's, at the very least, go watch the trailer. You'll get the flavor of what you're in for. It's not a big investment. It's a lot of fun. It's always good to see Robert Englund do something other than Freddy Krueger. And you can tell, I just admire, this man seems to enter every project he does with the attitude of, I'm going to have as much fun as a human can possibly have while I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And he totally does. He hams it up. He chews the scenery. He's got like weird milky eyes in this movie that make him look creepy. It's very weird and fun and just an oddity. Now, I did not realize this, but it has 2 sequels.
Wow.
There's The Mangler 2, and then there was an attempt at a reboot, The Mangler Reborn. Now there is
Reborn.
Yes,
It's a machine.
I know.
Okay.
Now The Mangler 2 starred Lance Henriksen, and actually had nothing to do with a laundry folding machine. It was about a computer virus that gets released in a school. So
Cool.
yeah. Now, The Mangler it did not win any Academy Awards, and it shouldn't, but I highly recommend it. It's a good time. That's sort of the theme of me for this episode is, don't take everything so seriously and just have some fun and watch
For
these
a good
watch
time,
these weirdos.
call The Mangler.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So my next recommendations or mentions aren't really related, but sort of are. They have a connective tissue, and that tissue is Holly Gibney. So I'm first going to recommend the series Mr. Mercedes. That came out in 2017. It had 3 seasons. There are 3 novels in the Mr. Mercedes verse. Mr. Mercedes,
like
Finders
the
Keepers.
Bill Hodges trilogy?
Yeah, and End of Watch. And it was developed by David E. Kelly. We affectionately call him Mr. Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yes.
And it stars Brendan Gleeson and Harry Treadaway, who is so good.
Fans of the first season of Penny Dreadful will recognize him as Victor Frankenstein.
Yeah, he's very good in
He's
this.
a great actor. He's got a really like a big cleft, like dimple in his chin. It's a distinctive look. He's an interesting looking guy.
So it follows the 3 books pretty well, and Justine Loop plays Holly Gibney in this adaptation, and she was in Succession, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I think I mentioned her when I recommended Holly.
And as all of our listeners have listened to every second of every episode, there's no reason to remind them of that.
Yeah. I mean, you can read the 3 books, or you can watch all 3 seasons on Peacock.
Starring Brendan Gleeson as...
I said that.
You did.
I did.
I just wanted to mention that again because he is awesome from 28 Days Later.
And a lot of other things.
And like everything. He's in everything. He's in
that movie with Colin Farrell that I loved so much.
Banshees of Inisherin.
Oh my God. It was so good and weird. But yeah, he plays Bill Hodges, this like salty retired detective, and it's great. The next is The Outsider, which was just a one-season television series on HBO, based on the novel by the same name, which if you're going to read and watch anything, read The Outsider and watch The Outsider.
Agreed.
Of anything that we've mentioned today, I think this is the one to pick.
Not The Mangler?
And it was adapted by Richard Price, who did The Wire, The Night of, and The Deuce. So I can guarantee you that you're going to love it. It's extraordinarily done. It came out in 2018, and it stars Ben Mendelsohn, who... Don't sleep on him, man. He is
he's
so
good in
incredible.
everything he's in. Everything he's in, he's good. But definitely check out...
I originally saw him in that show with Friday Night Lights. Oh, shit. What is it? Bloodlines.
Oh,
that was incredible show.
I originally saw him in the film version of Animal Kingdom, not the TV series. He was the elder brother in Animal Kingdom, and he was goddamn amazing. There's this scene especially where he's just sitting silently, like with this real brooding, intense look on his face while Air Supply plays over him, and it's a very alarming juxtaposition.
In Bloodlines, he plays like a pretty fucked up brother in this pretty fucked up family.
Now he's in like Star Wars and Marvel shit.
He's great.
Yeah.
Stars Patty Considine, who
love him.
You love.
Oh man. Check out Dead Man Walking.
Bill Camp and Jason Bateman, who also directed the first 2 episodes of this series.
And did a great job doing it.
And Holly Gibney is played by Cynthia Erivo in this series, who is like incredible. Yeah. And she, although described as Caucasian in the novel, Jason Bateman insisted that Cynthia Erivo be cast as Holly because he wanted to work with her.
Much older in the novel.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the novel as well, the police note that Terry Maitland watches Ozark.
Wow.
And in this series, Terry Maitland is played by Jason Bateman.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
So essentially, this is about a accused coach, local baseball coach, who is accused of killing and raping a boy who was found dead in the woods. But it's not done by a human entity. It's
very much a condemnation of our modern rush to judgment. I mean, we ostensibly live in a society that, you know, has the motto of
also
innocent until proven guilty, but
also about the justice system, also about vengeance.
Well, the way that they arrest Terry Maitland is very deliberate and very aggressive.
But vengeance about what happens, essentially.
Yeah. No, it's a like most Stephen King works. There's a lot of social commentary.
I'm not going to give a lot away. It's so great. The novel is great. The show is great. In November of 2020, HBO passed on a second season.
Good.
And King stated that the scripts for the second season were written and the cast and crew were interested in continuing the series, but it won't happen.
I'm totally fine with that. Not everything needs to be milked to death.
What has already happened is The Boogeyman, which is a film that we have talked about and recommended and is out now, starring Chris Messina. And The Stand TV series, the most recent one, which is on, I believe, Paramount?
Yeah.
Which I heard, I have not watched myself, but I heard it's very good.
You know, I don't know that one, but I did watch the 90s version with Rob Lowe. That was pretty good.
I thought it was somebody else.
No, Rob Lowe was in it. That guy from My Favorite Martian, the old guy. Anyway, I want to mention a couple of quick ones. Now, obviously, you know, there were a lot of movies that came out during this time and a lot of fantastic ones that we didn't talk about, like Needful Things with Ed Harris and Max von Sydow is really great. Definitely check out Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really anything Mike Flanagan and Stephen King related. Gerald's Game.
Chapel White is supposed to be really great. Chapelwaite,
Chapelwaite,
which is like loosely
that's the
Salem's Lot
with
Adrian Brody.
Yeah. Now the Green Mile is also pretty good. There's some real bullshit too, like the Tommyknockers and Dreamcatcher, which I didn't recommend because they're not fun. They're just bad.
Mr. Harrigan's Phone I thought was pretty good. It was just a quick watch.
Yeah, I think everything's being adapted, but I want to end my time here with a very brief mention of Desperation, which is directed by Mick Garris. That was that weird book that came out at the same time as the lost novel from Richard Bachman, which was like the same story in an alternate universe. Anyway, Mick Garris directed it. It's got Ron Perlman in it. But the one I really want to end on is the cinematic classic 1992's Lawnmower Man, which turned a short story, and I mean a really short story, which is about a guy that hires someone to mow his lawn and then looks outside to see that it's sort of like a pig monster that's eating the grass, as I remember it, into this movie, which is essentially Pierce Brosnan using 90s virtual reality to Flowers for Algernon, a mentally challenged Jeff Fahey, into a horny supervillain.
Yikes.
So Stephen King sued New Line to get his name taken off of this, but didn't win that lawsuit. He did win. He didn't win it until well after the movie had already been released on VHS. So they were able to market this movie as From the Mind of Stephen King, which is why I saw it in the first place and was a little surprised. Now, the thing is, anybody our age will definitely watch this movie with a certain degree of fondness because it's extremely of its time. Anybody not of that time, say younger than us, is probably going to watch this movie and go, oh, now I know what's wrong with my parents. This is a really, really weird beast of a movie. I don't know if I can recommend it necessarily, but it's certainly curious. And for the time, the CGI is pretty good. It was followed by a sequel that somehow manages to be even worse, starring Matt Frewer as the dumb guy that gets virtual reality into being a genius supervillain. Because I guess when you use VR to turn the mentally challenged smart, they also go evil. That's the lesson I've taken away from this. So, Lawnmower Man, an adaptation that was so far away from the source material that Stephen King sued the company that made it.
Yeah.
Not for money, but to have his name as far away from it as possible. And he did win, and New Line had to rush out new box art to all the stores with his name removed. So it did cost them a bit of money in the end. And they did have to pay Stephen King some money.
Well, I was talking about what's already out, but I wanted to also just mention before we end about what's coming.
Ooh, yes. What we might be addressing in a potential part 3.
Well, we'll see. My two are The Talisman, which is supposed to be a feature-length film version
Let's hope.
of the novel that in 2021 was revealed that Amblin would be developing it with the Duffer Brothers helping with development.
Perfect production company. Perfect.
Anybody that loves The
showrunners.
Talisman and has watched Stranger Things understands why this is such a good mashup.
I'm pretty sure Spielberg has wanted to make The Talisman for years. So Amblin being involved is no surprise.
And then Billy Summers.
Yeah.
Deadline Hollywood in 2022 reported that it would be adapted into a 10-episode limited series with J.J. Abrams, Stephen King, Edward Zwick, and Marshall Herkovitz as executive producers, and Warner Brothers acquired the project in February.
That's so weird that we mentioned Ed Zwick earlier in the pod with Glory.
I know.
Yeah.
And I guess it's also going to be developed in combo with Bad Robot and Appian Way, which is Leonardo DiCaprio's.
Also the road that leads to Rome.
So I wonder if he's going to be Billy Summers.
That would be pretty cool. That would be
insane.
After he drops his girlfriend off at high school, he will...
oh my God. I would love for him to be Billy Summers.
I
incredible.
am most looking forward to the upcoming Mike Flanagan headlined adaptation of The Dark Tower. Now, The Dark Tower has
Also
been in
has its
development
own
for a long
iterations
time.
out there.
Yeah, it's been so originally it was being developed by Ron Howard. It was going to be a TV series and a set of movies that sort of, it would be like a movie, then a season of TV, and then another movie. It was very innovative and interesting. I like Ron Howard, but I wasn't super jazzed necessarily. I think he's very talented, but his movies for me are a little flavorless. That quite famously didn't happen, and we got a movie that I have not seen, because why? That did not go down well with Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey.
I know, so sad.
But now we're getting a whole... Amazon has bought the rights, and they don't mind throwing money at things. They're going to be doing it as a series.
They can throw money at this podcast if they want.
Hi, Amazon. We love capitalism.
I love freebie.
Now, this one being developed by Mike Flanagan it's very exciting because I think he is the new kind of muse for adapting Stephen King works.
It's pronounced news.
He's amazing. His passion for the project is obvious. And Ron Howard back in the day had cast Javier Bardem as Roland Deschain. So I don't think he's still attached to it, but I'm interested to see if they stick with that kind of aesthetic, that sort of like swarthy, tall, big, broad-shouldered type of guy. But yeah, that's the one I'm most looking forward to. It is a property that is near and dear to me, but I can't think of anybody better suited to adapt it than Mike Flanagan.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, and check us out on our new YouTube channel.
Pop off those purity rings and go watch Sleepwalkers, everybody.
Yeah, exactly, with your mom.
Bye.
Bye. Terror in Tandem is written, produced, and recorded by Laura and Richard Mathiasen, and edited and mixed by Richard Mathiasen. Our theme was written and performed by Carrie Denver, and all other music was written and performed by David Hispanic. All opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and should be taken as such. Thanks for listening, and please remember to give us a like, a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. We're still